Toshiro Izukage, captain of the 10th squad in the Gotei 13, a prodigy who had gained his Zanpakuto and joined the academy, only being there for one short year before joining the Gotei 13 and going through his Bankai training. This young prodigy, who then later on became the captain of the 10th squad and fought against most of Aizen's Espada and done quite well against the 3rd Espada tier Helibel. What would happen if that same person who spent his years trying to persevere through his life after the defeat of Aizen? He had been humiliated by Aizen, and he has spent all this time training to gain his honor back, and obviously to protect his subordinates and to fulfill his duty as a captain. What if this same person had been reincarnated into the world of Naruto instead of going to hell to become its new warden? So, this is what we're going to be doing today. And what if Naruto was Toshiro's reincarnation? I had already did this series a few months back in July, and back then my story hadn't been as evolved as it is now, so now hopefully I can try to give you a more entertaining story. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. By the way, I'm back. Yeah, so sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Bring that heat, boy.
So we start this what if, as the Nine Tails attack had gone quite similarly. Oh my god, my English. The attack had gone usual to canon, as I do with most of my what ifs. I usually just have Naruto use his spiritual pressure to this end the Nine Tails, right? This time I'm gonna have that exactly go the thing, but the Nine Tails won't be completely dead. It's just it would take about a century or two for him to actually reform properly, and by then all of society would have been modernized, so he would not really cause much trouble. So after pretty much when Minato and Kushina had been impaled by Kurama's nail, Naruto had a icy kind of Ryatsu explode out of him as Kurama's kind of physical appearance started to freeze away, as then it would crack as he would as crackled ice pieces would float in the wind. Kurama was just there a second and then just wasn't there. So after the Nine Tails attack, Naruto would start living on his own, as he was having a hard time. Most of the villagers, he couldn't buy anything from the stores, or he'd be overcharged, and with his allowance that really didn't help him either. So he'd be walking around as suddenly a by the village exits, just by the borders per se, as a sort of elderly person who had been through the 3rd Great Ninja War, a little bit in the 2nd Great Ninja War, had took pity on him. This being a sort of elderly woman, I kind of like this idea that Rogue has done. Small tangent. I know tangents aren't good for the story, and I'm trying to be quick paced, but this is actually relevant. So, in what if Naruto had men made by Rogax? He had basically Naruto had a elderly figure, sort of like a grandmother figure, and this is kind of what I'm doing here. And obviously, this is what happened to Toshiro too. He was being raised by his grandmother, and this is when his Ryatsu started to affect her, and she began to become suddenly sick, in which she would apologize before, later on joining the academy to learn how to control this power. So this is what's gonna happen. Pretty much he'll start being trained-ish by this elderly woman. I don't really have a name for her, but I can call her Noelle, I guess. No, she's not actually Noelle, it's just a name. So he would be raised as about when he was 6 years old per se. He would start to have dreams of seeing a ice dragon, and obviously he'd see another figure being a adult figure of Toshiro Hitsugaya. As every time before he can even progress near the dream, he had always been awakened, as obviously slowly but surely the Noelle who had been taking care of him had started to receive effects from his output of Ryatsu, since she would there'd be like an icy presence, like it would be as if they were in a Mount Everest in a sense. So over the years it would start to affect her, as she wouldn't like get a deadly illness or anything, but he would start to notice that it was coming from himself, as he would apologize for this, asking if there was anything he could do, as she had an idea. As she would get out a katana, one looking like Toshiro's unreleased state, she would hand it over to him, as she would tell him to pour all of the power into the blade. Now, if you're wondering where would she get such idea, so this Noelle isn't some nobody. She was from the Mist Village, a village based on sword wielding. So one of its obviously people like Gaara and the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, how their swords became is how people from all over the village would come and pour their chakra into the blade, as they would go from the usual katana form to that of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. And this is something I'm just making up, so this doesn't happen in canon. And due to this, they would reform, and the reason why is that somewhat kind of gained like a Zanpakuto, pouring your energy into them, your soul energy. But due to the amount of energy that was poured in them, it didn't evolve into a Zanpakuto. It was just a sword with just constant life energy inside. Now Naruto would be pouring his energy, as suddenly he would go into his Shikai. Not really Shikai, but like Shikai. That sounded weird. But like he would activate his Shikai. He would get the sword would turn into like release an ice dragon, something like that, as he would whisper the incantation, reign over the frosted heavens, Hyorimaru. So after he would say this, he would remember portions of his memory from his past life as a kid, living in the Reincarnation district with his friend Momo and his grandmother. As he would start to, from that, then we'll do a time skip for about 10 years. Like I said, he was about 6 years old. As throughout the academy he was in, which he would shortly join but shortly graduate, for only 1 year it was there. As during this time he had made friends with people like Itachi and Shisui, prodigies at their time, while also being mentored by people like Kakashi and Guy for one reason specifically. As what would happen is Toshiro, or Naruto, would rise through the ranks pretty fast. He would graduate the academy when he was about 8 years old, as he would join the ninja forces, becoming Jonin just when he was 11 years old, as he had seen the battlefield and he's starting to master his Shikai and his Bankai, hopefully. So what would happen from there is he would join the ANBU, serving under Itachi Uchiha, who was at the time a captain of the division. And obviously Naruto's going to be severely older than everyone else in canonical timeline, since it just simply makes sense. How would he, for example, if he had joined Itachi in his ANBU unit, that means that would be impossible since the Uchiha massacre had already taken place. So he would join Itachi's division right around when he was 12 years old, as now he would start to become well known in the ANBU, as he was taught by Itachi just the basic morals of life. As one day they were outside on the roof, just sitting and looking to the sky. It was a full moon, as it had been Naruto's birthday, October 10th, I believe. As Naruto didn't really get the understanding of what it means to have a birthday, as similar with his first life, he kind of still doesn't understand the concepts. As Itachi would explain to him that the birthday marks the year you were born, and how it's so important is it marks when you were, like I said, born. This is important because without you, the world wouldn't be this similar. just like every person is born, they have an impact on the movement of the world. So we celebrate that day, because if we weren't born, then the universe would have been different. As Naruto would realize this, as he would kind of start to gain a certain respect for his superior, being Itachi, as later on, a few days later, he had been walking through the Forest of Death doing his usual routine when he had seen a snake-like man. And this is right about the time Orochimaru had left the village and went rogue. He had seen Orochimaru sort of pulling something out of someone, and it actually looked metaphysical. This being, he took a portion of someone's soul, as this certain someone had mastered the ability similar to Toshiro, and this is not just nobody will actually recognize this person from the story of Bleach, and you'll see here in a second. So Naruto would unsheath his blade as he would go into a Shikai, as he would impure from the person going to stab at them, but they would simply dodge, turning into a pile of snakes. As Naruto had looked down at the person, and this would be, it's kind of hard to explain here. This person is, my mind just disappeared. So this person would be, I know this person doesn't get a lot of attention in the Naruto series, and even though she's like the MC of the story, not the MC, but she's a MC of the story, so it'd be Sakura. As what would happen is, obviously, Orochimaru had went through the Hidden Leaf Village, taking portions of people's souls, similar to Aizen in the Rukongai, taking the souls of Rukongai citizens, and she had taken a portion of her soul since she had pretty okay chakra reserves for just a civilian or academy student. As then suddenly, Sakura would wake up, but her head would start hurting, as suddenly her facial features would start to change, as the sword she had been wielding, and obviously this feels weird saying, but this is not the Sakura we all know and can. I had changed Sakura's character a little bit, but she's kind of like the Rangiku of the story. So there would be a sword at her side, as it would start to, she would gain a Ryatsu aura in a sense, before it would just disappear, or just go faint. As then she would look at Naruto and pretty much ask him who are you, and then ask, who am I? As during this process, she had completely lost all traces of her memory. And this feels weird saying, because I never done any of this in the story, but hey bro, why not? You gotta full send it. But pretty much Naruto wouldn't say, well, I don't know who you are either. As Naruto would start to think, he would think, maybe I should give you a name. As he would think of the name from his past life, Rangiku Matsumoto. And from there, Sakura Haruno would no longer be Sakura Haruno. This would be Rangiku Matsumoto, as due to the whole Orochimaru taking a piece of her soul, some of her identity will then be taken. As, how do I say this? The other part of her soul would sort of kind of how do I say, it's a little hard to explain. It would try to fill in what's lost, as this would change her features, her DNA, anything like that. So it's legit the soul being taken away, or at least a portion of it. As, let's just say, some way, somehow, her features would be more like Matsumoto. And honestly, I just kind of it seems appropriate, I guess. But after this will lead to I just call it Rangiku now. I guess but Rangiku would then go home, or the newly found Rangiku, I guess you can say, would go home after talking a bit with Naruto, as Naruto would just continue his duties. Now later on, the few days, Itachi would then go rogue, as Naruto would gain a goal. Our newfound goal is to bring Itachi to justice, as obviously he had heard through Jiraiya, who visited the next few days afterwards to see what happened, as Jiraiya had told him that he had joined a newly found group he had been investigating, being the Akatsuki, as in a few years they're gonna do something in which it will reveal their plans. But at that point, Jiraiya did not know what their plan was, as Naruto would agree to help Jiraiya to take down the Akatsuki, them being sort of a two-man team in a way. Obviously, Jiraiya wouldn't accept this since Naruto was his godson, and it'd be interesting for them to develop a sort of bond, and not that way. As now Naruto is about 12 years old, like I say, we'll be doing a 4-year time skip. Now at this point, Naruto will be called in by Hiruzen. What's happening is he was being called in to be part of Team 7, as he was, as now we flash back to the day of the massacre. Now, the reason why Naruto says bring Itachi to justice is it was just, a plan. It's not really the literal version of bring someone to justice. It was just sort of a metaphorical plan in order to bring Itachi back to the village. Now, if somebody heard Naruto saying, I'm going to bring Itachi back to the village, they're obviously going to refute against this. But if he heard somebody say, I'm going to bring Itachi to justice, they're going to be more like, oh, you're probably just going to arrest him or something like that. And they wouldn't question it. Obviously, he could just not tell people that he's going to go after Itachi and bring him back to the village, because that would cause conflict between Naruto and Sasuke. But at that point, it wouldn't really matter, because they both have sort of co-aligning goals, except the whole killing part, which will not be happening. But yeah, so he was being told by Hiruzen that obviously on that day, remember massacre flashback, Itachi had written him a letter telling him to protect Sasuke with his life. And this was his previous captain, right? So someone who he respected very much. And for him to leave after committing such crime, even though Sasuke didn't commit this crime, he was actually the victim of said crime, he was still going to honor the wish. So from then, he would be watching Sasuke from afar, stopping Danzo from going after Sasuke or something like that. And he kind of became his his protector in a way. So on this day, he was told by Hiruzen to pretty much join Team 7 as its third member, as he had told Naruto that someone else had joined, which was Rangiku. And it's going to be really hard for me to say Rangiku, even though I know it's Sakura, but that's only the Sakura I know in canon, which is not Sakura this timeline, so it's kind of hard to say. But yeah, so Naruto would head over to the academy, as once he would get there, he obviously his outfit, I didn't really go over that. That's kind of a little bit important. Obviously, he'd be rocking the Gote 13 Hayori, because that looks pretty good. And the fact is, he's the captain of the ANBU, or at least sort of isn't now, but it doesn't mean he's not, but he's just on a mission and say to be in Team 7, but at that point he isn't. He's just wearing the Hayori because it's drippy. Who doesn't want to wear it? It's pretty good, as he would be in his usual outfit. As obviously, if you guys didn't know, I'm gonna mention it here, but Naruto would be having his adult form after the time skip, as it makes pretty interesting sense. Naruto will be looking like Toshiro before his adult Bankai, and then in the time skip he'll master his adult Bankai, as it seems like a pretty decent plan. He starts training his abilities when he's 6 to 9, and that obviously takes 10 years to master your Bankai. Naruto learned it pretty early on when he's 8 or 9, and he's not really learning it, just kind of attaining it again, or learning it again in a way. So see how you will. So Naruto would then meet up with Sasuke and Rangiku, as they would start to converse. Sasuke would be more to himself, as he would start to talk to Rangiku, as she was sort of just sitting there, and she wouldn't really, it's kind of hard to say, she's not completely like Rangiku, because if she was like Rangiku, she'd be a drunk, but she's a kid, so that wouldn't make sense. So she'd just kind of be chilling. I don't really know what else to say, since there isn't much screen time with actually kid Rangiku in order for me to actually interpret this story. So see how you will. Okay, so Kakashi would come in. He would be late as usual, 30 minutes late, as pretty much they would all head up to the roof after Kakashi would say, hello, Team 7. So later on, what would happen is they'd all be upstairs. They would do their introductions, and Naruto's goal will be to obviously bring someone to justice. He's not gonna say who it is, since he doesn't really know these people much to actually like say who it is, but like obviously he would say that, and it'd be kind of create a dynamic between Sasuke and Naruto. Sasuke wants to kill a certain someone, while Naruto wants to bring someone to justice. While Rangiku says she wants to be a great kunoichi. Alright, that seems like a goal all kunoichi want to attain. But yeah. So after this, Kakashi would start to explain to them that they'll do a test in order to, actually see if they're worthy, and in which they would all, nod their heads, and Kakashi would explain to meet him tomorrow at the training ground. As, he would then disappear, as the whole time it was a clone. So what would happen then is Naruto would go back to his, home, as he would retire for the night. As now we will go over the sparring, I guess, the team exercise. As once Naruto had gotten up from his sleep, he would then, get up and get ready, as he would have his katana on his sheath and his sash, I guess you can say. As then he would head over to the training ground. Obviously being told not to eat, he would not eat, even though he's already accustomed to the fact of not eating, as he has in many missions been in situations where he could not eat for several days. So now, Naruto would head over to the training ground, as once he would get there, he would see Sasuke and Rangiku. Now, once he would come onto the training ground, he'd wave to both of them, as then he would start to converse with them, just waiting for the sun to rise properly, I guess you can say. As Kakashi would then, about an hour later, he would come onto the training field, as he would start to explain the bell test. Now, he would start to bring out, 2 bells, and the thing is, Naruto would notice that this is 2 bells, and there's 3 of them, so he'd probably think it's like a teamwork exercise. It's Naruto, being Toshiro, so Toshiro's pretty smart. He should be able to figure out what the team exercise, the purpose of it was. So Naruto would hear Kakashi say go, as Naruto knew the point was to take the bells, and he was just going to give them to his teammates to show he was working together. But that means his teammates have to be doing something too. So suddenly he would see Rangiku pull out her sword, as then her sword started to disappear. Like the sharp part of her blade would start to disappear, as now Rangiku is activating her Shikai, Hinako. I don't know the exact activations phrase, but I know it's like her name's Zanpakuto name is Hinako. As it would start to disappear, and sort of like Byakuya, but it would be ash. As it would start to go over to Kakashi. Now Kakashi's eyes would widen just for momentarily before the ashes were about to hit him. He would turn straight into lightning. He had used the lightning shadow clone to at least get himself away from that, because he didn't know what it was, and it wouldn't be a good thing to be hit by it. As Naruto would then point his hand out before using a Bakudo number 61, Rikujo Kuro, before then using Bakudo number 63, Sajo Sabuka. As Naruto kind of feel the spiritual pressure leave him, but it wouldn't be too much, as it would just, kind of be on his knee. And obviously those are pretty two high level Kidos. I'm just kidding. He would not be on his knee though. I mean, come on, he's a captain. He should be able to at least perform normal Kido. Before he would tell Sasuke to do it, as Sasuke would go through a few hand signs before then using the fireball jutsu, as Kakashi would be like, getting on your level shouldn't know fire affinity, and he would then he'd just kind of be shocked and all. But then he'd realize he's an Uchiha, so like he would know fire style. But what would happen next is Kakashi would be hit by the fireball, but he had pretty much coated his body in chakra, so he wouldn't be affected by the fireball too much. So after the fireball hit him, he'd be seen with kind of a little bit fire burns and bruises over his body, as Kakashi would then pull out the same bells they were trying to take, as he would then tell them that they passed. As he would tell them that the point of the exam was for them to work together, and Naruto had quickly figured that out, as they had technically worked together. And I know that's kind of a cop-out, but the point of the test was for them to work together, so they technically passed that. they're capable of working together. So this would be the end of the bell test. Alright, so now Naruto will be experiencing, the Team 7 will be going on the same Land of the Waves mission. Now, what would happen is through that whole month, 1 month time skip by the way, through that whole month, Naruto and his team would be doing D-ranked missions. As now, they had been given a C-rank mission, as they had been, bored of all these D-rank missions. They had asked the Hokage to give them a better mission, in which he would. He would give them the Land of the Waves mission to escort a man to the Land of the Waves who is a bridge builder, and they need to defend him while he builds the bridge. They would all agree to the mission as Tazuna would walk in. He would look at Naruto, Rangiku, and Sasuke. Not gonna lie, he was pretty impressed. They all looked pretty strong, but Naruto just like short at the time, since he's like Toshiro's like height before the adult phase. So like Toshiro's pretty short. So like he would just make a few short jokes before Naruto would kind of like lose his cool before then like using his Ryatsu on him. But then like Kakashi would stop him. Obviously, it's just a comical moment per se. So they would all meet outside the village gates with their stuff packed, as Naruto and the rest of Team 7 would head towards the Land of the Waves. About 2 hours in, they would walk over a puddle. Naruto would look at this puddle, and he would look at Kakashi, and Kakashi noticed this puddle, as they were just simply waiting. As what happened is, the two demon brothers of the mist would come out the puddle, as they would quote-unquote kill Kakashi with their chain, as then Naruto would then grab the chain, as they would suddenly get pulled because of Naruto's intense strength, as then Naruto would unsheath the sword before then cutting them down, as they would receive like a cut through their neck, as then they would be dropped on the floor before coughing up in their own blood and then dying. That the way I said and then dying, that was a little hysterical, honestly. The hell, man, I'm cold. No, I'm just kidding. But after the he had taken down the demon brothers of the mist, he had looked at Kakashi, as he had seen that was a substitution clone. As Kakashi would then come up from the bushes, congratulating Naruto on his reflexes and quickly taking down the demon brothers, commenting how that's exactly how I would expect the ANBU captain to react. As Sasuke and Rangiku would be shocked, Naruto, who they thought was just a genin from a different village, was actually the ANBU captain, and one of the ANBU captains to be more specific. As Naruto would then say, yeah, I've been captain since I was about 12 years old. As they would then be shocked again by how young he is, as obviously they'd question how old he is, in which he would answer that he was about 16, in which they would remark that they were only 13, yet he was younger than them when he became captain. As Naruto would then tell them to stay focused, as also they would realize Tazuna's lie, as Kakashi would then tell Tazuna to spill the beans, in which he would, as Kakashi would look at Naruto. Naruto didn't really seem distressed at the fact that Zabuza, Momochi, and Gato were after them, as he would ask Naruto, why didn't he question Tazuna if he knew? As Naruto would then say, well, you're Kakashi, right? You fought in the 3rd grade ninja war. Fighting Zabuza will just be a warm-up. And then he would comment about his own power being far higher than you, and only the Hokage can possibly counter me, and that's just being respectful to the Hokage. It's not like Hiruzen is actually stronger than Naruto. He's not. But it would be a pretty good battle. So Team 7 would continue as they would head over to the Land of the Waves. Now, once they would get there, Naruto would just look at the terrain, like the city and all, and it looked poor. Like, they almost had barely anything. And before he can even go in there, he's planning to help the people out and stuff like that, just a random thought. As before he can even get there, the mist would start to become so thick, he could not even see the same city he had saw before. Suddenly, he would start to think for a bit before he would then yell out that this is a hidden mist jutsu and that they all need to duck. As they would all duck, a sword would then barely miss their head, as it would then lodge itself into the tree after missing and not really, cutting their head off. As then Zabuza would then land the blade, telling Naruto that he had good reflexes for a kid, as Zabuza had seen his height, but he wasn't really pulled out, tricked by the height, and think he was a kid. He really was a kid. He's 16. As he would then realize who Naruto was, as then he would question Naruto, saying, "So you're taking a bunch of these kids? Aren't you ANBU? It's a bit disrespectful, don't you think?" As Naruto would unsheath his blade and appear behind him, saying, "It's a bit disrespectful for someone as strong as you, but don't worry, we'll have a proper battle." As Zabuza would then smile before, they clash. Naruto would start clashing with Zabuza, as they would have a swordsman battle, as Naruto would be using his Zanjutsu techniques, while Zabuza would be using his techniques just as from the Mist Village. As, they'd be clashing sword to sword, as Naruto would see how this battle was sort of futile, as he was only in base, or, he was still in, base with his Shikai. As then he would then, raise his blades pointing towards Zabuza before then saying, "Bankai." As then he would say, "Daigiren Hyorimaru." As there'd be an explosion of ice, as before they would see Naruto, they would see about 12 flower petals of floating above and just in the air, just there. As then they would see Naruto. He had 2 ice wings, and his hands had become kind of enveloped in ice. So would his feet. As his outfit had changed a bit, as his neck collar would gain, fur on it, similar to that of Ichigo's Vastalorde form, and his outfit had become just clear white, while his skin had become kind of started to become pop out more due to the ice. As then Zabuza would then say, "It's a cool technique and all, but I'm sorry I can't really match out with something as potent as that. Guess I'll just use my sword, eh?" As Zabuza would start clashing with Naruto, as Naruto had gotten a little complacent, as suddenly Zabuza would then cut his arm off. As Naruto's left arm would be lobbed off, he would then be a little shocked until suddenly the ice would then cover that region before it would start to reform. Now, if you're a little bit confused, I have a theory. So my theory is that Toshiro, due to his kind of complicated Bankai ability, he should have a sort of healing factor. The fact, because when Aizen had cut him down in half, pretty much in half, he then said that they had barely enough energy to just watch Aizen kill Yamamoto. And maybe this was referencing his high speed factor, or maybe not, but maybe I'm just talking out of my ass here. But pretty much what would happen is his arm would regrow, but it'd be kind of slow and kind of painful. It would probably take about 20 seconds, as Zabuza would just kind of be there in shock, just watching it. As then he would prepare to go for an attack on on Zabuza. As then he would appear in front of him, as Zabuza would be kind of confused. He had saw a version of Naruto just in front of him, as the version was still there, as Naruto had made a clone out of his Ryatsu, similar to that of Soifon. He had used his immense ho-ho technique to pretty much make a clone. So then Naruto would appear in front of him, before then using his ability to change the weather. As then above them, it would start to become thunder and snow and other kind of dangerous weather. I don't know what to say. Dangerous weather, like hail and shit, and it would actually hurt whenever it would make contact with your skin. As Naruto would then use his compress all of the ice into the tip of his blade, for then swinging down, and there'd be a kind of beam of ice in a sense, as the rest of the terrain would be covered in ice, as Zabuza would widen his eyes before he'd be cut down. Zabuza would then be defeated, as obviously Haku, who had been resistant to Naruto's attacks, had came out from the ice, quickly using his demonic ice mirror jutsu. Naruto would then be trapped inside. Due to his boost of strength from his releasing his Bankai, he quickly swung down his blade, destroying the ice mirror jutsu, as he then appeared in front of Haku before then cutting him through the chest, ending him right there. As this would lead to the completion of the mission of pretty much, I guess you can say, him becoming, him seeing Gato. I'm kind of my words. Him seeing Gato and seeing his mobsters, pull up. As then he would start to, go through the mobsters and cut them down. In which I don't really have to go over this since they're pretty weak. Even Kid Naruto from the canonical timeline could take these guys out. So Naruto would then take out all of everyone, including Gato, as he would give all the money from Gato's riches to the people who he had been oppressing, as that seemed fair. It was pretty fair punishment. Not punishment, pretty fair liberation in a sense. So now Naruto would then pretty much, like I said, complete the mission, and he would get his reward, as the mission had been ranked up from a C rank to an A rank. So he got pretty good, decent money, and due to the fact he's an ANBU captain, he would get a sort of multiplier in a sense. So now, after the mission, Team 7 would head back to Konoha. As once they would get there, they would head back to their homes and rest for the day, as this will lead to the start of the Chunin exams. So now we'll be going over the Akatsuki's perspective. So it's obviously going to be short, but pretty much we look at the Akatsuki. They comment how Team 7 had just went on a mission and Naruto was growing too powerful. With his potential, they would be unstoppable 3 years from now, or just a few years from now, as they had all agreed that they were going to attack at the Chunin exams with Orochimaru's help, because the Orochimaru had gathered Sand and Sound Village together, so it would be a great invasion, and they would take over the Leaf before then looking for the Nine Tails without any kind of difficulty. So they would start to plan away, as now we switch over to Orochimaru. He had been tasked by the Akatsuki simply just kill the Hokage, as now he was kind of beveling in his new technique, being the curse mark, which he had not just got recently. He had always had the technique, in which he took many people's souls to add to the technique, making it more stronger. As you remember, he had took a small girl's soul, but she had a lot of potential, so it was a good game. Her name was obviously Sakura Haruno, but now apparently she had changed her name due to the side effects, and now her name was Rangiku Matsumoto. Even her whole body look changed too, and her style of fighting. She had become a new person. As pretty much what would happen is he would start to put most of the souls into the curse mark for Kimimaro because he wanted his body. So obviously that didn't really go well due to the fact that he's sick and all, but we won't really have to worry about that now. So pretty much now we time skip to the start of the Chunin exams, with Team 7 meeting up with Team Gaara, and it'd kind of be a similar interaction, so it's not really needed for me to go over that. So we'll time skip straight to the first part of the Chunin exams, being the written portion. As they would go into Lee, as Sasuke would then fight Lee, and then that would end similarly, of course. Obviously it'd be a little stronger than usual, but it would still be relatively the same. As then they would go upstairs and pretty much go past the guards for then going inside the room. As Naruto and Sasuke and I almost said Sakura, but Rangiku, they would kind of pass in their own way. Sasuke would use the Sharingan to cheat, while Naruto, he already went through the Chunin exams. Even though it's not the same, they had a similar test like this. And the fact is, he is ANBU captain. that means he has to be at least smart enough to pass these exams as some sort of warm-up. So he would pass the exams with ease. Rangiku is pretty smart, so she would also do the same. As now Naruto and Rangiku and Sasuke had seen, Hanko legit kick through the window. She came through the window and started to introduce herself, while Ibiki would kind of have a little fit about the fact that she literally just kicked through the window. As then she would start to tell everyone to go over to training ground 44 and get ready for the next part of the Chunin exams. As once we would get there, this will lead to the not the finale, but it's getting close to the end of this what if. As I just had a random thought come into my mind about the ending, but I was like, nah, that feel like I cheated you guys out of it, so I shouldn't do it. But just an idea though. I was thinking Orochimaru should absorb everyone, as he was gonna take over Sasuke's body. So imagine if he took over all the Akatsuki's body. That means when he dies, and they die too. That means he just dies in general. But I was like, no, I didn't want to cheat you guys out. So it's gonna be them in their actual forms and all. But once they would go into the forest of death, Naruto had felt someone's presence. He'd always felt that presence before, but he just wasn't focusing on it. It was that of Orochimaru's. He had looked over to his right and saw a grass ninja girl, as he felt the presence itself since he felt it before. This was Orochimaru. As now he was looking at them in the flesh, as he could just slit his throat right now, but he realized he was allowed to kill in this test, so nobody would question the fact that he had killed Orochimaru, and he was going to be taking back Rangiku's soul, or at least a portion of it. So once the proctor said start, Naruto would be doing the hunting, and not like the canon Orochimaru going after them. So Orochimaru would be running through, disguised as a grass ninja girl, as suddenly she'd feel someone's presence, just a small presence, as it'd be Team 7, as she would feel a presence before it would disappear. Then suddenly she would feel it just in front of her, as suddenly Naruto's blade was going through Orochimaru's neck, as he had appeared in front of her using Utsusemi, pretty much trading a place with his clothing to appear in front of her. As then he would slice through his neck, as Orochimaru would then start to cough up blood, saying Teme. No, I'm just kidding. But he'd be like Naruto Uzumaki, as he would tremble in anger. As then he would release the blade from his neck, as the blood would start pooling from his neck. As then he would start coughing up before he would start to get into a fighting stance. Before anything happens, a huge rain of ash would then kind of go over him before he would be kind of crushed or flattened by the technique. Afterwards, Sasuke would then appear in front of him before wrapping him around in ninja wire, kind of detaining him to the tree. As then he would use the wire as a way to connect his flames to the tree, kind of burning Orochimaru. As this would lead to Orochimaru, regurgitating himself, as Naruto will be annoyed, as he would go into his Bankai pretty quickly. As then he would appear in front of her, in front of Orochimaru, before then putting all the ice into the tip of his blade before swinging down, creating a sort of just a lot. It would create a radius around them where just ice would start to freeze over, the grass would start to freeze over into just dust, and so would Orochimaru. Once he would slice down Orochimaru straight through his head, he would then start to turn into ice, as then he would then crackle away, similar to how Kurama did. As Naruto had ended Orochimaru before he had dropped his bags and belongings, and this would lead to him picking up the scroll, but an object, sort of, a circle-based object. This will be sort of like the Hokyoku, but it's not like the Hokyoku, it's just a similar shape of the Hokyoku, as this had all the souls he had collected. He had then walked back to Rangiku, as then he had given her soul back, but her memory still remained intact. because once you take someone's soul, it can never be truly put back, which is why Tobirama had completely wiped the technique from all the data books it had recorded. So yeah, obviously he had made the technique, but he didn't want anyone having it. This would be a sort of similar technique to that of the Reaper Death Seal, but you wouldn't actually give your soul away to give your soul and their soul to the Reaper Death. You would just keep their soul. Obviously it has a lot of consequences, as now we see what Orochimaru was like. He's pretty sick, right? And that's due to that technique. He wouldn't just randomly be sick for no reason. No, of course not. Obviously, you can just say also the bodies. The fact he's constantly taking over people's bodies too, like that. That all adds up. But afterwards, Rangiku's would be kind of her power just starts to increase. So would her like Ryatsu in a sense. As then they would have the scroll and they would head over to the the tower. Now once they would get there, I don't feel like I have to go over this, but I will, just the specific battles. So Naruto versus Kiba, honestly, this isn't even a battle. Naruto would just freeze Kiba in place. Sasuke versus Yori, similar way, but like Sasuke didn't get the curse mark, so it would just be much easier for him. Rangiku versus Ino. Ino cannot bypass Rangiku's spiritual pressure to actually use her technique, so Rangiku would also have Shunpo, so she could just appear in front of her and just like cut her down or knock her out, something as simple as that, or use Hakufuku. As then we lead to the third part of the Chunin exams. So Lee versus Gaara would kind of go the same way, but right away when Lee was about to get his legs crushed, Naruto or the sand would suddenly start freezing, as Naruto would then kick down the sand, or it's ice now, as he had saved Lee. As Naruto had looked at Lee, telling him this place does not look like the forest of death. You're not allowed to kill here. And that was exactly true. You are not allowed to kill in this portion of the test. On the forest of death, you were allowed to, but now you're not allowed to. In which the guy would be eternally grateful for Naruto saving Lee, as he would be like no problem and all. Before we lead to the third part of the Chunin exams, Naruto will be placed against Neji, and he had seen the way he had hurt Hinata, and he wouldn't really interfere here, since like Kakashi, Guy, and the rest of the other Jonin were interfering just as fast. Not just as fast, but like it was pretty fast, so just enough. So Naruto would be placed against Lee, Sasuke would then be placed against Gaara, Rangiku would then be placed against pretty much no one, since those who won't make it there. It was originally against Dosu, but he's not there. Shikamaru against Tamari, and then finally Shino versus Kankuro. So pretty much Jiraiya would then come back to the village, as Naruto had been walking through the village with Rangiku, as Sasuke had been taken by Kakashi to train, as Naruto and Rangiku were just hanging out. As then they had kind of met a man being Jiraiya. As he was doing his research, Naruto had quickly interrupted him, as Naruto had finally met Jiraiya. Or not finally, he had met Jiraiya before, but finally met Jiraiya again. As Jiraiya would then say, "Oh, Naruto, it's you. Who's this person?" As Naruto would then say, "Oh, it's Rangiku. She's has similar abilities to me, being able to kind of build, putting in life energy into a sword to make a sentient being." As Jiraiya would then say, "Oh yeah, Zanpakuto you called it?" As Naruto would nod his head, saying yeah. As Jiraiya would offer him to train, as Naruto would gladly accept, as he's always willing to train, even though he is kind of his potential is much higher than anyone else's. He does need to hone that same potential. As Naruto and Rangiku would be training with Jiraiya in completely different techniques. Now, I had an idea by Doge, and he would tell me that pretty much Sakura should wield Rangiku or Heineko, and it'd be sort of like that, as Rangiku would be from the summoning world. And I could actually implicate this as during the 1 month training, Sakura would then kind of become sort of like Sakura again, but still have the personalities and looks of Rangiku, as then she would be able to summon Hinako whenever she wishes to. But Hinako is not really in the summoning world or anything like that, even though it would be actually a pretty good idea, and I should have implicated it here. I just completely forgot. I'm just kidding. I just wasn't feeling the whole summoning world thing. It just wasn't appealing to me. I don't know why it wasn't, but it just wasn't appealing to me. Even though Doge is a pretty good story writer, I guess you can say. But back to the story. So after the 1 month of training, Naruto and Rangiku would master more of their powers, as they would make it to the arena. As once they would get there and everyone would settle down and the fight would start to begin, there'd be a huge cloud of smoke that would appear, as the fields and the arena would be covered by black flames. As once the smoke would disappear, all the Akatsuki members would then be there. Pain, Nagato too is there with the 6 paths there too, as they're not really as strong since Nagato is not in his chair, so put that into notice. But Itachi's there, Kisame, Kakuzu, Sasori, Deidara, Tobi, specifically Obito, as they'd be already to take down Naruto, as Orochimaru would also be there, as he had also taken over Kimimura's body, as Nagato had used in the one of the Pain's abilities to pretty much heal Orochimaru and heal Itachi's blindness and sickness, as they needed everyone at their fullest. As Naruto was looking at Itachi, as Itachi would then use Amaterasu to create a circle of flames. Suddenly it would blow him back, as he would start to kind of get burned from it, but Naruto would then go Bankai, as he then walked through the flames, as he would then unsheath his blade, as he would show the tip of it, as he would then say, "Sorry, but your flames didn't go through," as it didn't penetrate his ice, as he had made a vacuum of ice where he took all the water, not all the water, but most of the water in the atmosphere into his ice, just until there was barely enough for the world to exist. Obviously, the world needs oxygen, which is in water, and also needs hydrogen too. As Itachi's, seeing Naruto's easily bypassing Amaterasu, would then say, "Oh," as this would mark the similar conversation Toshiro had with Basby, as he said, your flames didn't make it through, as Basby would be like, "Oh, really?" And he would start to power up with his burner fingers. But then what would happen next is Itachi then go into his armor Susanoo, before he would then say, "Let's see if this gets you," as he would then make a bow and arrow and shoot it at Naruto, and Pain would then use the almighty push, kind of causing destruction, as the other members would go wild, as Naruto would get annoyed, as he had remembered a technique he had been taught by one of his mentors, who had been the Kido expert. This would be none other than Kisuke Uruhara. When in his time to visit the world of living, he asked Kisuke Uruhara advice on how to use a Kido. This would be as Naruto would then raise his finger into the air, as a blue aura would then start to surround him, as then he would say, "Haro no Kuru." Oh my god, I ruined it. "Haro no Kyuju Kuro Hitsugi," as after he would recite the incantations, a huge purple blocks would surround Nagato and Itachi, as Itachi was still in the Susanoo, so he was kind of defended from it, but Nagato would be hit by the the Kurohitsugi, as his body would then be crushed and flattened in many different ways, as he had been cut and mutilated into just pieces of flesh. After this, Itachi and Naruto would then scream as they would clash with each other, as Itachi would use his Tosca blade, when Naruto's spiritual energy had taken the form of dragons, ice dragons to be more specific, as everyone watching would then see the fight. Obviously, Hiruzen would be fighting Orochimaru just like before, as the barrier would be made, first and second Hokage are revived. That fight would go exactly the same. But Naruto would be fighting through all the Akatsuki, as everyone, like, they were not honorable. They would be throwing explosions at them, and he'd be annoyed, as then suddenly he would feel a sort of sensation go over his body. He couldn't even control it. He wanted to release it, as he would aim his blade at them before swinging it, as there'd be an explosion of Ryatsu. Once this would happen, his body would then transform into that of his adult Bankai, as then he would then appear in front of Itachi, as the ice, his whole Susanoo had been iced over, as then it would shatter. In the middle of him trying to shoot his arrow, he had been interrupted, as he had been completely frozen. Not himself, but Susanoo. As Itachi would then fall over on the floor, bloodied, as Naruto had walked up to him, before then smiling, kind of at his old friend. Now, obviously he had been kind of earlier told by Itachi way years ago, whenever they had met, he was gonna have to go all out on Itachi, and Naruto would have to come to accept this. Obviously, Naruto had became to cover his wounds in ice, but not the ice to like kill someone, but the ice to like heal someone in a sense. So he would heal them, as then he would continue to fight the rest of the Akatsuki, cutting them all down. Obviously, it was pretty easy. He had defeated Itachi, probably the second strongest Akatsuki members, other than Nagato and Obito. Obito wasn't officially a member yet, so I can't really count that. But now Naruto would be looking at Obito, as his ice attacks had went right through him. As then he would realize his technique. He had to put it in a specific place where he would kamui, or have it phase through. So he had tricked him with like a clone per se of his Shunpo clone, like Shunpo, like flashed up clone. Then he would be able to defeat him. As then Naruto would then make about 50 clones. As then Obito would then say, "What an interesting performance, but an ANBU captain like you shouldn't be doing this. It's not in your style." So Naruto would then say, "I mean, this is an assassination mission, so there's a lot of things that are in my style." As then, the weather would start to change, as suddenly he'd say, "I'm not really ANBU captain anymore. I'm a member of Team 7, led by Kakashi Hatake." As then he would appear in front of, Obito, as multiple of his clones would stab at him, and Obito would be so confused where to kamui, as Naruto would say, "I got you now." As then he would stab right through his chest, as then the ice would start to spread through his body, as Obito would be coughing up blood, as Obito would then say, "Seems like he got me. Guess the Infinite Suke no Mi clan will have." I keep saying clan, I meant to say plan. Infinite Tsukuyomi plan will have to wait now, as I'll be in the afterlife. As Naruto would then twist the blade, as he would then say, "I couldn't agree more," as he would then kill Obito. Now, this would lead to the end of the battle, as Naruto's names will be marked down in history for saving the world, practically, or possibly saving the world. As Naruto would also have to accept the fact that he was and also died, but it was a bit unfortunate. But hey, it is what it is. I'm not gonna say that. But Naruto would then settle down, as he would still be ANBU captain, but he would settle down as who would be Hokage? I feel like Kakashi would still be Hokage, but after that, it just have to be someone else from the next generation, eh? Well, honestly, you guys can choose that. But without further ado, guys, this is the end of What If Naruto Was Toshiro's Reincarnation. But without further ado, guys, have a good day, and it's good to be back.